What vehicle is able to destroy an IS-7 with a single shot? Which tank has a weapon with higher damage per minute than any other vehicle in the game? We'll reveal the answers to these questions in today's video. The British Tank Destroyer line has recently been added to World of Tanks. Today we'll go over these new vehicles and discuss their strengths and weaknesses. The branch begins with the Universal Carrier 2 PDR. This tiny tank destroyer is deceptively dangerous due to its agility. To go along with its speed, it also is equipped with a gun that's capable of 70 alpha damage. It can't have everything. Even though it has an amazing Tier 2 damage, its accuracy leaves something to be desired. However, it has excellent hull traverse speed. Similar to every TD of this tier, it does not boast very thick armor. Your primary tactic should be to destroy an enemy before they have a chance to turn their attention upon you. Position is everything. Without high accuracy, shooting at a distance will be difficult, and your lack of armor makes close combat risky. You'll have to rely on hiding and good timing. The Valentine AT is the next vehicle in the branch at Tier 3. It's less maneuverable than its Tier 2 predecessor, but it has better armor. With 60mm of armor, you should be able to take a punch or two from similarly tiered tanks. The firepower for this vehicle is also a step up. It can equip one of two guns. The 94mm gun is capable of high alpha damage, but with a relatively low rate of fire and only mid-range accuracy. Something to keep in mind is that the shelf life for this particular gun is rather slow. It'll be quite difficult to hit targets that are on the move. And any miss can be crucial. The other option is the 57mm gun. It features decent accuracy and solid penetration potential. Its low alpha damage is offset by its high rate of fire. Given the right situation, you may even be able to dispose of an enemy before they are even aware it's too late to retreat. The 57mm may be the best option for facing enemies of the same tier. It makes the Valentine AT effective at both long range and in close quarters. The Alecto resides in the Tier 4 position of the new TD line. The primary strengths for this vehicle are high rate of fire, solid maneuverability, a fantastic view range, and a small profile. But it does lack a bit of armor compared to other TDs. The Alecto's gun has an excellent rate of fire and good alpha damage, but its penetration and accuracy are a touch low. This isn't an easy vehicle to handle, as it doesn't fare well against heavily armored opponents. Avoid committing to engagements where you're outmatched. You should attempt to pick off medium or light tanks. The Alecto isn't a traditional TD. It's speedy and small, making it a perfect candidate for scout duty. Its excellent view range will really allow you to provide good vision coverage of an area without exposing yourself to danger. Use those bushes. It certainly isn't a tank for everyone, as it requires an extensive knowledge of map layouts and enemy weak spots. You'll be working pretty hard to offset some of the firepower disadvantages, but it's still a fun vehicle to play. The AT2 sits staunchly on the Tier 5 spot and is a change of pace from its predecessor on the TD line. Here is where we see some heavy frontal armor, 203mm of it. For its tier, it's monstrous. Even though it's heavily armored, it isn't without weaknesses. It putters along at 20 km/h, and it has a slow traverse speed. Many light and medium tanks will have no problem flanking this vehicle once it's been revealed. The weapon for the AT2 is an odd pairing. It's quick firing with good accuracy, but has only minuscule alpha damage and lackluster penetration. You'll find yourself needing to use AP composite rigid shells to penetrate heavy tanks from the front. This TD excels at long-range battles. At a distance, this tank minimizes its weaknesses and can lay down a steady stream of fire on enemy vehicles, punishing anyone out of position. As you may have noticed, British Tank Destroyers are not quite a stereotypical TD branch. The AT2 doesn't fulfill the typical role of a damage dealer. The 6th tier belongs to the AT8, which is fairly similar to the AT2 in its armor composition, but it does differ. The AT8's weak points are situated differently than the AT2's. Here's where the weapons take a turn. The rate of fire, accuracy, aiming speed, and average penetration are all greatly improved from the previous tier. The alpha damage is low, but due to its rate of fire, the damage per minute is incredibly high. The AT8 is able to defend and assault flanks effectively. Its accuracy also allows you to hang back and fight from long range. There are very few situations where this vehicle isn't effective. The most dangerous enemies are medium tanks, as they can flank your position. As ever, artillery is a threat, but just play smart and you'll be able to make the most of every match. Many tank destroyers know the pain of being cursed with low speed. The Churchill Gun Carrier, the second Tier 6 TD, is the link between the heavy Churchill 1 and the AT-7 tank destroyer. The Churchill Gun Carrier is an adaptation of the Churchill tank, but in this TD there's a control cabin instead of a turret. The frontal armor is relatively weak at only 88mm without any slope. This makes the TD very vulnerable. Its acceleration characteristics won't impress you either. Its maximum speed is only 25 km per hour. All that being said, the 94mm gun should make up for it. It's got great accuracy, alpha damage, and penetration. It even has a decent aim time and rate of fire, though not especially high. The efficiency of this tank destroyer is its strength. It's got all the tools to support its team in securing a victory. It's definitely a support tank and should stay behind the front lines. Its rate of fire will allow you to pin down enemies, while allies move in to finish them off. Your gun brings a lot of potential to the fight. Focus on tracking and hitting modules. At the 7th tier, you'll be able to roll out in the AT-7. Its most distinctive feature is the right-mounted gun. The orientation of the gun doesn't inhibit this vehicle's effectiveness at all. The 83mm will perform admirably with respect to accuracy, rate of fire, and penetration potential. This tank has mid-range damage and aiming characteristics. The armor is fairly high, but just like the AT-8 compared to the AT-2, the weak points have changed position. We're still trotting along at a respectable, if not stately, 20 km per hour in this tank. Slow, but steady. The mounting of the gun on the right portion of the vehicle allows for some unique advantages. You can peek around corners and other cover without revealing yourself. Keep this advantage in mind as you shift around the battlefield. Use the hulls of destroyed tanks to keep your exposure to a minimum. Your tank will take care of the rest. At Tier 8, we have the AT-15, whose configuration unsurprisingly resembles that of AT-15A. However, the AT-15 definitely has the advantage when it comes to firepower. High accuracy, aiming speed, and penetration make the AT-15's weapon one of the most formidable at this particular tier. The high rate of fire is what makes the gun so impressive. It's got an incredible DPM. There really isn't anything that detracts from the effectiveness of the AT-15's weapon. The vehicle's armor is nothing to scoff at, but it does have a few prominent weak spots that could be exploited. Again, the maximum speed is a scant 20 km per hour, but the AT-15 remains a versatile TD. In the right hands, it will hold the line against a sustained assault, or even charge, albeit slowly, into the fray. The most important thing to keep in mind is your position. Move with your allies, letting them do the spotting, but staying where you can make the most of your firing speed. At last we come to the Tortoise, perhaps the most aptly named British tank destroyer. This Tier 9 inherits all the best traits from the previous vehicles in the branch, and gains a few others. Perhaps the best feature is its gun. The DPM is simply amazing. It's the same gun used by the FV215B heavy tank, but it has better accuracy and an improved rate of fire. You'd be hard-pressed to find a player who could say much against its aiming speed or its penetration. Any tank coming up against the Tortoise in a head-on battle will have a major problem on its hands. The Tier 9 armor will shrug off all but the strongest assault. Although the armor is not completely impervious to harm, it does have a few weak points. The Tortoise shines in extended battles. It can soak damage just as readily as it can dish it out. As usual, it's best to let your allies do the spotting while you zero in from long range. It's best served in an auxiliary role, supporting and then sustaining after allies have fallen. Even though the Tortoise is a behemoth, it is countered by swarm tactics. Don't let it become surrounded or flanked, as it has low maneuverability. Last but certainly not least in the British tank destroyer line is the mighty Tier 10 FV215B 183. There isn't another vehicle like it. It can potentially destroy any Tier 10 tank with a single shot. Using HE shells makes this tank truly devastating. They average 275mm of penetration and can deliver up to 2,188 points of damage in one volley. On paper, this TD can destroy an IS-7 with one shot to the frontal armor. In practice, it often destroys the T-62A, the Bat-Chatillon 25T, and the E-50M with a single round. It's not as simple as lining up a shot and firing, so let's take a closer look at this TD. Obviously, the main feature of the vehicle's gun is the damage. It is powerful, but does suffer from a low rate of fire and aiming speed. Every shot must count. Don't let your shot bounce or miss by being impatient. Assess the situation, and then fire. This TD can do a huge amount of damage with just one shot, but you can be undone by a clever and maneuverable enemy. You will most likely find yourself in close combat at some point. Predict return fire and flanking movements. Do some quick mental math. Who are you aiming at? How much damage will you do? And how much damage will you take? Is it worth it? If you can, try to take your shot as the enemy is reloading, then return to cover. Don't forget that this TD can use armor-piercing rounds as well. In certain matchups, this may even be preferable to using the high-explosive rounds. For example, when you meet an enemy with spaced armor, your HE shells may be rendered ineffective. If you put a shell into the side of an E100 with an HE shell, the average damage will be lower than if you hit the same spot with an AP shell. Carefully consider which ammo type to use in every situation. If you can spare the time to swap, then do so. The FV215B 183 features a few more advantages over previous tanks in this line as well. Most notably, it has a turret capable of rotating 90 degrees. The frontal hull armor is 152 millimeters thick and has a decent slope. The turret has 254 millimeter of armor. The armor is strong, but shouldn't be relied upon. The acceleration and maneuverability of this vehicle is another strong suit. Medium tanks will have trouble flanking it. Its maximum speed is 34 kilometers per hour, which gives you some degree of versatility when it comes to moving with the tides of battle. You won't be able to sprint from one side of the battlefield to the other, but you should be able to move with your allies to secure the map sector by sector. Some might say that the FV215-183 is like the mythical Achilles, incredibly powerful and fearsome, but not without its faults. The British tank destroyer family differs from other nations, but it is cut from the same cloth. They trade various weaknesses for significant strengths. They should not be underestimated. Don't expect significant speed or maneuverability in this line. Instead, find new ways to capitalize on your advantages. At the end of the line, you'll walk away with a vehicle that does artillery-like damage. The FV215B 183 is a must-have. Thank you for tuning in, and good luck on the battlefield.